a few days ago, this photo went viral. And what it claims is that a gun store in Sacramento was illegally confiscating magazines and holding essentially people's property hostage because they felt that they were breaking the law, and the people involved felt like they were being threatened with legal action. Now, there's a whole lot to this story. When I initially saw it, I thought, okay, it's probably some big misunderstanding. So I did my best to get a hold of both parties as well as the gun store and get to the bottom of the situation. I asked people to send me any relevant information. I got in touch with as many people as I can, and today I'm going to clear the air and discuss what happened, as giving as much information as I can without ruining anybody's life as far as doxing them. So we got to be kind of careful with what we're going to be saying today, but I am going to be giving you a better understanding of what's going on, because it's not quite everything that you've been told is correct, and I'm going to do my best to share the most accurate information with you. Now, before we get going though, I do want to say thank you to one of the sponsors of this channel, 80% Arms. They've been a huge supporter of me, huge supporter of litigation when it comes to defending the Second Amendment and your right to build something in the privacy of your own home without the government knowing. Ghost guns is a term that's scary, but I honestly want to embrace it. I think more people should be building ghost guns. So, if you're in the state of California, understand that there are some legalities. If you choose to follow the law, you're gonna have to do a few things before you build it. But if you live in a free state or freer state, you can have one of these bad boys shipped right to your door, build it. The government's none the wiser. Awesome, right? They ship lowers in just a few days, and the GST9, I hear the backlog and everything is getting a lot faster now. So pretty cool stuff. I'm really thankful to have 80% Arms. Use the Linktree link down below to view some other stuff that I might have available that you can take a look at. Maybe some spooky stuff that the government doesn't want you to have. So let's get into it today. Okay, so I'm standing, I'm moving around, new setup, trying to get everything kind of dialed in, still moving. So let's kind of break down what happened. Now, there's two people involved, the two people that were trying to do a private party transaction. I'm going to refer to them as M and one of them as P. I'm going to be referring to Sacramento Gun Club as SGC, or the gun store, or the gun club. Collectively, I might refer to it as any one of those names. Some employees reached out to me. I'm not going to name them by name. And some other people that were members reached out to me. Again, I'm not going to name them by name. But really what we got to focus on is the situation regarding two members or two customers who were attempting to do private party transactions with each other through the gun store. So I'm going to first give the perspective from the eyes of the gun club that was given to me by their lawyer. I reached out to them. I left a voicemail. Their lawyer got in touch with me, and we kind of had a little bit of conversation. I have nothing but nice things to say about the respectful tone and the openness of conversation that I receive from the lawyer. So from their perspective, what happens? Well, they see M and P come in wanting to do a transaction. M wanted to give P his pistol with 3 magazines that M believed were properly blocked to only allow 10 rounds to be inserted permanently. P wanted to give M his shotgun. So they start the transaction. The employee at the time is facilitating the paperwork, writing everything up, sees the magazines, sees that there's a block in them, says, yeah, that looks fine. P then is given all 3 magazines from the employee. Now, what I heard from the lawyer is that the policy of the company is to not allow the magazines, if they come into the store, to leave with the customer. Anything that comes into the store with those is supposed to stay with the gun, because they want to make sure that everything goes proper, and it's just a level of consistency. Regardless of how you feel about the policy, their policy was in place, and the director happened to see that the magazines went into the employee's hand and then went into P's hand, and then P left with them. The director found that suspicious because it is of his opinion that the policy is to be maintained, and that if the employee broke the policy of allowing the mags to leave, that there must be something wrong, and that they believed that there was a potential that the employee engaged in illegal sale or illegal transfer of a magazine that was over 10 rounds. Now, M and P both claim that the magazines were properly pinned and blocked and epoxied properly to the state's requirements as far as what constitutes a permanently blocked magazine. There are some guidelines that the DOJ tried to put out but were later redacted and never officially published, but it's still something that people look at when they refer to permanently blocked magazines. So in the state of California, if you legally had a 30-round mag that you acquired during what has been referred to as Freedom Week, you can still possess those. However, the issue comes in hand if you want to give them to someone else. You couldn't legally do that. You cannot acquire more of these. You cannot transfer, sell, import, or manufacture any magazine that holds over 10 rounds. So what some people do is they put a rivet, or they put in a block and epoxy, or a block and rivet, so that the magazine can permanently only hold 10 rounds. That is generally the way it works. People put a block inside and then they epoxy the base plate shut so that you cannot remove the base plate, therefore making it a permanently 10-round mag. The gun store claims, the director claims, that they asked them to bring the magazines back, and P did come back with the magazines because he felt there was nothing wrong. P shows them the magazines. The director or an employee discovers, and it was referred to as glaringly obvious, that the magazines were not permanently blocked to only hold 10 rounds. Now, I'm going to show a video at the end of this, but at the end of this video, I'm going to show the video proof, but you're just going to have to trust me when I say, until you watch the rest of this video, that the magazines, the way they were blocked to only hold 10 rounds, while assembled, would only hold 10 rounds. They show that you can only fit 10 rounds, you cannot fit an 11th. However, the base plates were not epoxied shut. There was no visible evidence that I could see of, or that they could see, of epoxy having once been on the base plate that just over the last, 7-8 years since they were acquired in 2014 could have eroded. So what they had was a follower with a block coming off the bottom of it that was epoxy to the follower, but since the base plates were fully removable, they were actually not in the what is believed to be compliance with the law. Because again, the guidance doesn't truly exist anymore. It's not official, but people still go by the definition that is there of permanent. While there is no examples of what permanent means, if you could just pop the base plate off, it's pretty clear that it is in fact not permanent. So at that point they said, hey, we cannot give these mags back to M because that would be a transfer of a high capacity magazine, which is still illegal currently in the state of California. So they were of the opinion that they could not. I asked the lawyer, could you just, since they have a high capacity magazine permit, epoxy them shut so that they would be properly blocked and pinned, and then give them to P. They initially were hesitant to that idea because they felt it was illegal, because they believed that the only way to actually handle that would be to either destroy them with the written permission from M or send them to the Department of Justice. When they said that, I asked if what they meant by that was send the mags to the Department of Justice and report M and P for a illegal transfer of magazines. They held to the fact that it was not that they were reporting them to the Department of Justice, just that they were forfeiting those magazines, which I'm still kind of confused. Now, at that point, it was told to M and P that they were going to cancel those transactions. I told the lawyer, I think that we can meet a amicable resolution where M and P both get the guns that they attempted to transfer, the Drosses don't get canceled, and that the magazines could be retrofitted to be permanently only holding 10 rounds, at which point P could take receipt of those magazines. They were open to that idea, minus the magazines. Eventually, it started to come around. We had a little discussion about the fact that Freedom Week and the Benitez ruling is questionable whether or not it's in place. It got to a point where they said that that wouldn't be legal because of the specific circumstances of how they came about to be acquiring them. But I told him that I still believe that the best amicable solution would be to allow the two people to get their guns and allow P to receive the magazines. So I'm about 10 minutes into this video, and we are now just getting to the perspective of how the story was told to me by the other two parties involved, not the gun club. That was mostly just the gun club. I tried to keep my perspective and my opinion out of it, except for specific times when I was having conversations with the lawyer. Again, nothing but nice things to say about the lawyer. He handled everything very well. I think this is a very difficult situation to handle. So now we're at the perspective of M and P. They show up, they start the transfer, P receives the magazines, they go home. They think nothing is wrong at this point. M believes that these magazines are properly blocked per the definitions at the time in 2014 when it was done by a local FFL who was a law enforcement officer. P also believes that these magazines are properly blocked per the instructions given by the law enforcement officer and FFL in 2014, which was not the same place as SGC. They don't believe that they're breaking any laws. P takes the mags home after being given them by the employee. They go home. Everything seems fine. At this point, P and M both receive a phone call from the director or from the gun store threatening them with legal action. Now, again, this is their perspective, and this is how they told it to me. They were being told, allegedly, that they were breaking the law if they did not bring the mags back to them, and that because they suspected that they were breaking the law by transferring an illegal magazine, that they needed to bring them to the store to rectify the situation so that nothing needed to be reported to the authorities. This very much scared both parties involved. P, believing that nothing was wrong, and M, believing that nothing was wrong, they go to the gun store because at this point they still are under the impression that they are doing nothing wrong, nothing illegal. They did not know that the magazines were not properly permanently locked to the specifications of the document that isn't technically in place right now, but is still relied upon when it comes to how you determine what is permanent. If you had to ask me if I thought that those magazines, which the base plates can just come right off and you could take the block out, if that would be permanent, I don't know. I probably wouldn't do that if I was in a position where I could get caught by doing that. This isn't legal advice. None of this is legal advice. But they still believe that they were doing nothing wrong. They get to the gun store, at which point the director with P calls M, because M was not in the gun store, M was not in possession of the magazines. P was in possession of the magazines for the pistol he was going to receive. At this point, the director is now yelling at M, threatening them with legal action again because they're breaking the law, saying to them that they will be canceling the DROS once a manager of the store gets in. I believe that there's a distinct separation between the gun club and the gun range. So I believe a manager of the gun store / range would be needed in order to press cancel on the DROS system, because in that process of filling out the paperwork on the state website, typically at the top it would say pending while you're waiting your 10 days. And then after 10 days, it says approved, which you can click a little button to deliver the firearm to the new recipient. At that point, it was still in pending, so it was not yet canceled, but the threat of it being canceled was imminent. It was essentially at this point when they got in contact with me after I found out about it. I was initially contacted by some former employees about the situation because they were aware of it. I'm not sure if they're former employees or current employees, actually, off the top of my head, of who contacted me. And I can't really say specifically, but I was contacted about this situation. At this point, I got a hold of M, and M told me that he believed that there was some sort of vendetta against M. M, a while ago, brought a guest to the range, a guest who was a former employee. The lawyers say that the former employee knowingly brought in what the state would consider an assault weapon. Now, most stores, in my opinion, if they're a range and they don't have cameras and they're not under a whole lot of scrutiny, would turn a blind eye if they are seeing something and someone is being safe. They would kind of just assume that the people are following the law in accordance with the law, as long as they're not doing anything dangerous. Now, the thing is, according to the lawyer and the director, this former employee showed his firearm in a non-compliant configuration to the current employees. They said, that's illegal. We don't know if you should be shooting that here. It is alleged that he said, I do what I want. Then, which, big balls on the dude, I'll give him that. But you don't really want to rub in the face of the people that you're at the range saying, hey, I am breaking the law. Everybody, obviously I wouldn't recommend people going to the rooftops with evidence of them breaking the law, yelling, I am breaking the law in front of your local police department. So there's levels to this whole non-compliance thing, which shallnotcomply.com, you can get the new patch. I guess I'll show that there. I'm orienting it wrong, but shallnotcomply.com, got a link in the description. Always got to plug yourself, right? So at this point, it gets even more difficult, and I realize I'm 16 minutes in. The director sees the video of that guest shooting the non-compliant firearm. This upset the director because he was blatantly breaking the law and breaking the range rules in front of everyone. Matt believed that that was why there was some sort of vendetta or grievance with him and why they were targeted. The lawyer holds to that that is not the case, and when presented with the question of what would they have to gain from screwing over their customers like this, I agree. However, some people that were there and witnessed this situation and those encounters believe that the director at the time of the magazine debacle was treating them poorly, and that he was being very aggressive. So I have several people, including some former employees at this point, backing up that side of the story. Here's the deal. When it comes to customer service, I don't care if you have a 500-star rating on Yelp, a 5-star Uber rating. I don't care who you are. If you deal with enough customers, eventually you will wrong somebody. Do I think that this could have been potentially the only time that the director in the range has wronged somebody? Allegedly still, because that's all just their perspective. I wasn't there. I can't say for a fact that this happened. I doubt that it's the only time, but it's a pretty bad time. The most recent thing that I heard from the lawyer was that MP and SGC were coming to an amicable agreement. I don't particularly know, and I can't share the details of that amicable agreement. However, I presented an option that I know M favored, and I presented that to SGC at one point. Could that be the way it is? I certainly hope so. I believe that they have worked out their issues and are now going to be getting what they need and doing what they need to do. I'm sorry that I can't be too specific on this because it's a complicated issue. I don't want the range and the people that work there and everyone involved to be financially hurt, because California's pretty rough as it is, right? I want there to be as many gun stores as possible in the state. I want them all to be flourishing, and I want everybody to be able to have good access to guns. So I want this, and I believe that this is now having been handled in a way that is amicable to all parties. I spent way too much time over the past few days conversing with both and SGC through their lawyer to get all this handled. Initially, it looked pretty bad. I'm not really saying that it's going to look much better after this, but when you consider the fact that the magazines weren't actually in compliance, it makes things seem a little bit better, because regardless of how we feel about the laws, the ranges do have some sense of obligation to protect themselves, because if people are blatantly breaking the laws in front of them, that can harm their ability to operate as a range. And if they get closed down because the DOJ decides to punch them in the sphincter, obviously that wouldn't be good for them. So it's a difficult situation, and I'm trying to be as unopinionated as I can. The problem is, having seen an email from the director threatening someone with making the threat that they had sent video footage of a shooter breaking the law to the DOJ, that's pretty hard for me to just ignore. I think that this specific situation with the mags has been handled well, and that all parties involved have come to an agreement, or are coming to an agreement maybe, that is amicable for all of them. I think that none of this should have happened in the first place, and I think that this all could have been handled much better. When I speak to some of the former employees, they claim that there was no policy of the mags having to stay with the gun. There is no official written policy outside of a basic employee handbook, and that was confirmed with the lawyer. However, the employees hold that there was no actual policy on record requiring that they keep the mags. And now, keeping a mag sort of makes sense in the sense that in order to pick up a gun in California from a gun store, you have to perform a safe handling demonstration. Generally, you're going to have to do a safe handling demonstration, meaning that you have to show how to properly, safely load and how to unload that firearm. Now, With a firearm like a Glock 17, that would be very easy to source a magazine for, or an AR-15, very easy to source a magazine for. Problem is, when it's an off-roster gun that they might not have the mags available for, it becomes a lot more difficult. So to some extent, I understand that policy, and I understand why they would want to hold the policy intact and follow it, even if the magazines had already left. I can kind of wrap my head around the fact that they just want to rectify the situation. However, what I've been told from several employees and former employees is that that policy didn't exist. I can't really tell you who to believe in that situation. I think both sides had a compelling argument. At the end of the day, I've tried to present this as fairly as possible. The situation makes a whole lot more sense from the gun store's side of it when you consider the fact that the magazines were in fact not legally pinned and blocked properly. Do I think this could have been handled a whole lot better? Yes. Do I think that this would have been handled as well as it has been if I had not tried to mediate this whole situation and it ended up getting to be very bad for the public opinion when it comes to their gun club? I don't know. It seems like it probably would not have if it was not going to hurt them financially to not solve it. Do I think the situation has been solved in a means that both parties and the gun club are happy with? I think so. I think that they have come to an agreement that is probably amicable for all of them. They figured it out. We're all adults. Sometimes people make mistakes. Many people spoke very highly of this range. At the end of the day, it's up for you to decide. Have you had good experiences with them? Great. Continue supporting them. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just trying to present this as fairly as I can because up until now, you probably only had one side of the story. At the end of this video, again, I am going to be sharing with you the video of them showing that the magazines were in fact not legally configured per the general consensus of what is considered permanent. But let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know if this video changes the context for you as it was initially probably presented to you. You guys know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace. Oh man. Okay, yeah, this was a difficult one. I'm gonna be honest. I spent a lot of time trying to mediate this, and I'm just happy to see that everything has kind of worked itself out. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's gonna be, at the end of the day, it's gonna be okay. There's bigger, more important things for us to focus on. One of those things being the fact that the ATF is currently trying to attack home-built firearms, personally manufactured firearms, changing the definition of what a firearm is, being so vague that millions of people would most likely become felons overnight, changing the requirements of FFLs in a way that would drastically destroy the firearms market nationwide. Currently, the comment period is not open online. When it is, I will go into much more depth. My fear is that all the people pushing this right now, which is good it's good to be talking about it, but my fear is that when the time actually comes for people to make those comments online, that the fire will be gone, the spark will be lost, and that people won't actually do what they need to do, and that we won't be able to rally the troops. So when that time comes, I'm going to be talking about this whole ATF debacle in much more depth, giving you much more information on how to properly write a letter. When that time comes, I hope that you follow through and leave your comments. Thank you.
We would like to produce this educational video to help people who are wanting to purchase a firearm under California law and under the current conditions involving high-capacity mags. Under California Code of Regulations, Title 11, Division 5, there's a subsection that allows high-capacity magazines to be sold if they've been rendered permanently unable to be used as high-capacity mags. Section 5491 states that the large capacity mag, if it's made permanently to hold only 10 rounds, it can be done in two ways. And the ways that the law specifically identifies is that there has to be a magazine block inside the magazine to prevent the magazine to hold more than 10 rounds. The second and most critical part of this law is that the base plate has to be permanently epoxied, and that's the specific language of the law, permanently epoxied. Now, if it's a metal base plate, it can be either spot welded or permanently epoxied. What we have here is involving a current PPT where the person who's wanting to buy this off-roster firearm, these magazines were a part of that. The magazines, as we look at them, As you can see here, this is from a Walther PPQ 9mm, and it's an off-roster firearm by current California law, and the PPQ comes with the high-capacity mags generally. As we can see here, each one of these magazines do have 10 rounds and cannot take anything more. So the first visual aspect of this is that no more than 10 rounds. So right now it looks like the law is in play here. But when we do a quick review of the magazine, the base plate, we do not see anything that shows permanent epoxy on the base plate. Now, that doesn't mean there's not any in there, but on visual cue, there's nothing to show that that's there. This has an extender on it, but again, we don't see anything. What we're going to do is to determine, and this will help people determine if they do a PPT to ensure that the magazines are fully compliant with California law. We're going to go ahead and unload and see if we can remove the base plate. As you can see, that base plate is not permanently affixed. As we look at the base plate, we don't see anything that shows anything that was permanently affixed to it. There's no residues, nothing to show that it was broken at the time or previously or anything like that. The first part of it is that we do have compliance involving the block. This is the PPQ block from a 15 to a 10 round mag. But what's interesting to help you identify what's going on, this is epoxy. Now it was epoxied into that, and again with use and stuff that breaks off. And that's fine. That's not a requirement that the block be epoxied. What's required is that the face or the plate has to be epoxied to the magazine. And as upon inspection, we see nothing that shows anything of an epoxy residue on this magazine. The intent of the law is very simple. The plate, if it can be removed, as we can see here, we can put the magazine right back together again. And return the magazine back to its original configuration for 15 rounds. And as you can see here, it's now 15 round mag. That's the big issue with dealing with private party transfers with these magazines. We don't want people to get into trouble because now this is, by California law, illegal to possess, and we don't want people to get in trouble with that. Real quickly, we're going to remove the rounds on these two to show you that these base plates are not permanently affixed. Again, no signs of residue, nothing to show that this was ever permanently affixed to the magazine. And again, with this base plate, there is no evidence of any type of prior epoxy to it. Again, the purpose of this video is to help people, if they're buying high capacity mags that have been told or are supposed to be rendered to be compliant with California law, very easy how to determine if in fact they are, so they don't have any issues having high capacity mags that are in violation of current California law. If the law changes in the future, then this won't be an issue.